to, well, anyways, you might need therapy. My name is Patrick Loftus, not a therapist. I'm a real estate lawyer. That's what I do for a living. I wouldn't call it exactly fun, but the outcomes are good because you need a place to live. If you want to reach out to me, find me on social media. I post a lot on Instagram. Loftus_law is how you find me there. Find me on TikTok as well, Loftus Law.
And Joey, if you don't mind, give us your info.
Yes, sir. Joey Mathews, NMLS 1330694. The VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at thevaloannerd.com across all the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd. If you're feeling bored, you can call or text me at 630-235-2405, and I'll give you the lowdown on rates.
Please.
Anywho. Ha! Oh, and I'll do it now. Sorry, that was still my intro. No, so last week, the week of September 30th through, what was it, October
6th?
Whatever, yeah. We saw a huge jump in the non-farm payrolls. So we saw it came in well over what was expected. So, and that's been the biggest gauge of the last couple months for the Fed and their future rate cuts, what they plan to do, right? So it was and we saw revisions to the previous 2 months upwards. So we saw big jobs gains, and that is what they are hyper-focused on in terms of how healthy the economy is. So what did that do to the markets? It made them worse if you're in the market to buy a house. It's good for the economy, right? It's a good problem to have in the economy if you're a human being and all that good stuff in your stock portfolio. But if you're shopping for a house, it's not the best news in the world. I will say, let's not be negative Nancy's, because rates are still better in general than they were same time last year, right? So, again, this is the biggest thing I will always say, and I've said it for the last almost 3 years we've been doing this show now, is the time to buy is when you're ready and when you can afford it. That's the best time to buy, regardless of what the market's doing, when you're ready and when you can afford it. That's the best time to buy. So don't try to time the market. It's a fool's errand. The end of the day, period. Later this week, actually today, we see the Federal Open Market Committee meetings coming out in half an hour. Today's October 9th at 10:11 a.m. Central Time. The rest of the week, we have the Consumer Price Index tomorrow, Thursday, October 10th, and Producer Price Index on Friday. So we will not see any major market reactions unless we way overshoot or undershoot what expectation is. But right now, I think that we're going to be in a flat market for a little while, especially because the Fed's not meeting again until November. So that's what's up, dogs. That's what's up.
And you know, that comment that you made when you're ready to buy, I kind of want to jump in on that one too. You know, I was looking at the stats this morning, and I'm a nerd when it comes to all these things. And
I love nerds, Charlie. I love nerds.
So says the VA Loan Nerd, right? And absolutely, but these numbers really, you know, they mean a lot to me. And I start looking at the September real estate transactions, and we're still we're less transactions than August of this year. Roughly, I think it was like 15% less month over month. And then the other one is going to be what we did compared to last year. And I know August, we were 1/3 the amount of real estate transactions in the entire Chicagoland market. September, I think we're a little bit closer to that, but, you know, like maybe only a quarter down instead. So 3/4 of the way work. So the numbers, you know, they have gone down as last year. And then there's this scale that I watch where it says that if it's a seller's market or a buyer's market or it's somewhere in the neutral plane. And for the last 4 years, it's always been pinned as a seller's market. And even when I do the home inspections to follow up with everybody, I hear that, you know, well, we had to go as is. We had a bid over. We can't really negotiate everything. But I'm hearing all that changing now. I hear that our clients are getting more and more leverage. And I got a feeling I'm triggering Patrick over here because he's doing a little bit of wiggling in front of me. And I get it. I think the market is starting to slow down. And yeah, the rates might be higher, but that should be allowing people to get a lower price on the homes is where I was going.
Boy, you know, those numbers, if you want to look at them just to get an overall view on a trend, I suppose there's some usefulness there. But on an individual level, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, they're kind of meaningless because real estate is such a geographical. The differences between even you go a couple blocks over from a certain spot and all of a sudden it's all different for whatever reason.
Even in the condos in the high-rise building, it changes from building to building.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of different characteristics and qualities that each building has, and it's going to make a big difference in the value of your individual unit. I do want to point out one thing, Joey. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the link that Charlie sent us, but did you happen to see what website that was from?
I have not had a chance to look at it because I was driving and I ran to the office.
All right, well, so I'm going to keep talking. Go take a look at the link and
my way.
And Charlie's
Is it Fox News?
Well, it's worse.
I did giggle.
It's worse, as a matter of fact. But one thing that.
But I don't think it's the mortgage one. I think it's
a
different.
I hate you now. I hate you. No, it was I was sleeping because I live in Arizona. It was still 4 a.m. when that came in.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, just as far as the legitimacy of that particular statistic. But when I think about leverage, I don't really focus at all on what the macro trends are because each individual transaction has its own characteristics and qualities. Each buyer has their own has the characteristics they're looking for in a home. If they're an investor, it'll be different from an owner occupant. If it's someone who's very handy as opposed to somebody who really doesn't even know, what the difference between a hammer and a screwdriver is. Those are just two examples. I could go on and on. But as far as, even the individual characteristics, as far as, what level, not everyone is built for the stress of having a back and forth negotiation and having it in doubt whether or not their
Lord
transaction.
knows I'm not. Yeah.
Well, and some people are like, look, if somebody is asking me for X number of dollars after the inspection, I just need this deal to go through. I need it to be over. And so, that person will be more generous than someone who really, if not has, can tolerate the stress of a negotiation. Some people even thrive under those conditions.
And you bring up a good point. Being an attorney, I know there's a lot of psychological stuff that they teach you in law school.
They don't teach us anything.
No, come on. It's about, I guess persuasion maybe is the right or wrong word. I don't know.
They don't teach you anything about persuasion in law school.
But how do you recognize or how do you educate your client how much leverage they have?
I don't.
How you don't at all?
No, I mean, look, if anything, if I'm trying to figure out, where do we stand in a transaction, I'm probably going to be asking the opinion of the real estate broker because they'll have been involved in the negotiation with the other side.
What are some of the things that they're going to share with the client then? Do you know that?
Well, sure. I mean, what are some things you want to take into consideration? Okay, so if you are going to buy a home because you intend to live in it, how many of the boxes does that home tick as opposed to everything else that you were out there seeing? What other homes are available at a similar price point in the locality that you're looking at that you could pivot to, or are you going to be stuck waiting for more inventory to come on the market? Is this particular property, does it have unique characteristics that make it very suitable for you? Those are all things that you would want to take into consideration. If it's I'm okay. There's a couple others that I was interested in. You might try to drive a harder bargain than if it's like, look, we walked in and we fell in love with this place. In that case, you might decide you're going to live with, this, that, or the other thing. I mean, at the end of the day, especially with an owner occupant, you've got to keep in mind the quality of life you're also trying to buy with the real estate. The real estate, you're expecting it to at least retain its value in terms of an investment if you're going to live in it, for the most part. I'm speaking very broadly here.
Yeah.
But as an owner occupant, what you're really buying is, it's close to my, favorite restaurants and tavern. It's in the school district that my kids, either my kids are already in or I envision them being in. It's close to family. I mean, I've had clients really compromise on properties that it's like, I don't know about that one. And they're like, look, it ticks so many boxes that I'm just not going to find anything else similar to it. Those people will, have less leverage, by the very nature of the situation that they're in. So, it's important that we look at the transaction holistically, to try to figure out, all right, where do we want to go with this? Do we want to win the argument on inspection, and meaning, well, they should have done that and they didn't, and so we're out. And you look back on it and you go, I wish we would have just bought that place. I could have put, $2-3 grand into it after closing, and it would have been perfect. In that case, we employed a bad strategy. Whereas, if you look at it from, if you back out of it and you try to look at it from a more of a bird's eye view, and you go, actually, all things considered, I don't like the way that the seller handled themselves in that particular transaction, but this is something that, for my family. And, don't forget that if we're talking about a family, we're talking about, a two spouses, probably some kids. There's more to it than just, I need to win this negotiation, or, the seller needs to do this, or I'm out of here. Or on the seller side, I don't have to sell. My property is worth, X number of dollars all day long, and I'm not accepting less. And it's like, you can think all of those things, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of existential factors. You're sort of beholden to the market, and you're also beholden to your circumstances.
And it's only worth whatever somebody's going to pay for it.
Well, some people know and believe that, and other people are like, it's worth what I think it's worth.
And maybe maybe it will be. I don't know. It's to me, it's. And I was looking at all the numbers on there, and the stuff that really, caught my attention was the number of bedrooms. And, so houses that have 5 bedrooms, they went up in a year 13%. That's a big number. And even the studios and the 1-bedroom places, the smaller condos and such, they still went up a good 10%. And that's 1 year. That's a huge return on investment. And the other number that kind of threw me for a loop is the amount of time on the market. And now we're at the 30 days, where before it was like less than a week, was the average stuff. And you tell me, Joey, how often are you seeing a change now from the time somebody gets pre-approved to the time that they're under contract?
Well, I think that we have to consider seasonality too. He's looking at the Chicago market.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's late in the year. So this is how the Chicago market ebbs and flows. And I wish we did have a realtor on today to really speak to this. But we're going to see a slowdown in the market because no one wants to move in the winter. And then we're going to see it pick back up in the spring, where we're going to have those less days on market again. And of course, I mean, houses are going to move no matter what. People have to move, jobs happen, all that good stuff. I mean, look at me. I moved to freaking Arizona from Chicago because, job. But yeah, I think that's just a silent factor that they aren't talking about, because it's silly to say that in Chicago that, it's slowing down in the winter because it's negative 20 degrees when you're trying to move. No one wants to move when it's negative 20 degrees.
Or when the kids are in school.
It feels terrible. Yeah. Or when the kids are, exactly.
Or during the holidays or whatever. Joey, you're spot on. The seasonality is playing a big part. There's an election coming up. People don't really want to. They don't want to do anything unless
don't
they
get me started.
Well, it's look, whether or not the three of us, I think we couldn't care less about the election in as far as it relates to the real estate market. But I think that is just a product of how close we are to it. I think that more if you look at just the general population, they are more sensitive to the fact that is potentially a big change that is bound to happen. There's also people who are looking at some of the policy. So we're going to get into politics, but some of the policies that are being proposed by the two candidates, and they say they're thinking to themselves, well, I would like to wait until there is more down payment assistance. I would like to wait until other things happen. I think if we throw 10 million people out of the country, then the housing market will loosen up. I don't think so.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I don't think those people are the ones that are owning the homes that you're trying to buy. But anyways, it's and the other part of it, Charlie, you love talking about leverage. From a seller's perspective, if you're under contract right now and you're trying to close in October, the last thing you want to have happen is a buyer walk, because now you're going back on the market in the softer time, and you're going to have to perhaps make some compromise unless you've got something that's really, really in demand or really, really special or whatever. You may be looking at a scenario where it's just there's not too many people out there looking for all of those reasons. And so, there may be an opportunity for a buyer. I mean, it's the old Warren Buffett thing, right? When everyone's zigging, he zags, and the other way around.
Buy low, sell high.
If you're saying there's that few people out there, looking, and there's that few transactions closing, that suggests to me that it would be an opportune time to get a good value. Now, like I've said many times before, people don't always shop on value, especially if they're looking for a place to live in. They're usually shopping based on monthly payment, which is where that interest rate comes in. And it's, you're going to be chasing that forever. If you're waiting on interest rates to come down, interest rates are going to come down when the economy softens up. And when the economy softens up, as good as you're feeling right now about your personal economy, you're going to start having doubts about that. So your feelings are going to continue to chase that thing that you think is coming down the pipe. I'm chasing lower interest rates. Okay, fine. Lower interest rates are here. I don't feel so good about how the economy is right now. I'm going to hold off, even though the interest rates got to where I was, that my trigger point of where I thought I could afford. And then, economy gets better, and now interest rates are higher, and you're like, oh, well, it's that magic factor that where things come together just the precise way. There was just a little tiny COVID time frame where those things lined up, and we're back to reality, which is that just if you're looking to buy a place to live in it, and you can afford that monthly payment, even if it's more than you were hoping to pay, just you got to bite that bullet. Get in there. The worst thing, like Joey said, try to time the market. Good luck. I think they say, in any given year, there's like 9 days where if you are not invested in the stock market, you will basically have forfeited all of the gains for the year. And that's why people don't try to time the market, because if we could all predict those 9 days, we'd just be like, woohoo, I got it. I don't have to deal with the ups and downs of it. But because
that's the one place I don't have any investments in.
Stock market?
Yeah. And I guess that's not true, because I'm in a few money markets.
Yeah.
And they invest in the stocks.
My advice, this is not financial advice because I'm not qualified to give it, but for me, I know enough about the stock market to throw all my money in the garbage on Wall Street bets. If you know, you know. So I just stick to index funds. That's my safe harbor.
So, going on the real estate as you were talking, which is all extremely valuable, but it goes back to, and I keep thinking, I know I said this over and over again, I bought my first house, it was like 19% interest, and then I've heard mortgages, what were they at the lowest, Joey? Like
when you said 18, 19, I thought you meant like 18, 19 the year.
No. It was in the, let's see, it was 1991.
Joey, I think that went right over his head.
It did. 2018 or 1918?
1819.
1819. Gotcha. All right. I knew I was old, but I didn't know I was that old.
Him and Dusable were settling the Chicago area.
They
together.
should have named the. I know, and it was between him and I that we were going to take the name. It was going to be the Bellefontaine Lakeshore Drive. All right, instead of Dusable.
Bellefontaine Lakeshore Drive.
That's the way it should be.
I think we should go to City Hall and start lobbying for it.
If Mayor Lightfoot was still in charge, I'm sure I could get somewhere.
She could walk right between your legs and you wouldn't even know it.
Is that a short joke?
Because you're too big and she's
there. It is.
Little.
It was a short joke. Unbelievable. But no, it goes back to, why I don't understand the rates unless I guess, I guess my brain is always spinning right now. Normal habits of a human being wants to buy the biggest house that they can afford. They want to spend every single penny that they got for a down payment, and they want to mortgage as much as they can. True or false?
I mean, that's often what maybe. I mean, it depends, which is always my answer. I mean, Joey,
true or false, Joey?
You're in a position where you get to see the percentage of income that people are going to be spending on their mortgage payment. I mean, I know you can't just pull data out of thin air like a wizard, but what
I just did.
What are you
it's
used
called
to seeing?
Anecdotal evidence,
there you go.
Right?
Give me some anecdotes.
Anecdotally, what people are spending on their mortgage. Well, last year was higher than this year. But that's because people are refinancing the ball last year, and they just said, "Hey, I'm going to bite the bullet for a while," knowing that the market does ebb and flow. But I love seeing when people are at the bare minimum under 45. I like to see.
What does that mean? Bare minimum under 45.
The 45% debt ratio, right?
Okay.
Bare minimum, because you're gonna be hurting.
So that's all debt.
45.
That's not just your housing payment. You're saying
yeah. That makes it tough. Because there so many people do so many things. I look at the back end housing ratio, because that's the only thing that really matters, because that tells you how much every month is going towards debt of the income, right? So depending on how much a person already has in debt, if they have no debt, some people still stretch to that 45 number. So I can't just give data out of thin air. The back end ratio is the most important one, in my opinion. So the front end rate. Oh my God, I'm talking about back end and front end ratios. I apologize. So a front end ratio is what we call your cost for primary housing, the amount of your gross income that is applied towards your full PITIA, your principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and any association dues.
And what's the max that can be for you to qualify for a mortgage?
On a conventional loan, your max back, there's not going to be a real max on the front end. In most situations, there is depending on a credit situation. Dude, that's a stacked question, because it changes based on a situation. It really does. Right. It changes based on credit situation, all kinds of things. But
if I make $1 million a year, if I'm spending 50% of that on my housing, I've still got plenty left over. So fair enough.
It's a nice house. Well, $500,000 a year mortgage.
No, well, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, why not? It's that loaded question. Anyways, I mean, I've seen back end ratio at 75% that I closed. And that was VA, obviously. But the highest you're able to go on a back end debt ratio, where half of your monthly income goes towards debt, is 50%. On an FHA loan, you can get that up to the highest I've seen is like right at 54.9999.
I was going to guess that 54.
And that's based on your gross, not your
gross,
not your take home.
Not your net. Exactly.
I think that throws some people for a loop.
With a little bit of money to afford groceries every month, and it doesn't include your cost for an electric bill, your gas bill, if you get municipality charges for water, none of that stuff. So
internet,
garbage,
PlayStation Network.
Yeah.
Video games is that's a food necessity, I think.
Honestly, bang for your buck, video games are an excellent value. You talk about a $60 video game that I'm going to spend hours and hours on. I mean, how often do I go out and blow that on a lunch?
We're changing the subject, but you end up costing more in work loss because you're playing the games on there. I know you.
I'm not doing it at noon on a Tuesday. Come on.
Are you?
Come on.
So,
I'm not.
But let's go back to
here.
Let's come here. But I do want to focus on now's the time to buy, because again, if we don't have a lot of buyers out there, and that was the problem. There were like 6,000 buyers for every house that goes on there, and people are lining up the doors on the very first day, even before it goes on the market. In fact, I think we're going to hear these off-market word I think you're going to start seeing that go by the wayside. I get it. The high-end neighborhoods, the most sought-after neighborhoods, they're still going to be on there longer. I get it. All right.
We've talked to a lot of people about that private listing network thing,
Yeah.
and I see pros and cons to it. And I think there is a place for it, especially for people who, if you've got a certain heightened need for privacy, or it's just being exposed publicly, like you are being listed on an MLS. I think that there should be an option for people who want to sell their home but don't necessarily want to have that kind of exposure to the public at large, especially given the fact that those MLS listings are more or less available. Pictures of your home, pictures of your friend, pictures of you, it's pretty invasive, man. Like, I can see that. And there are great arguments against it. Certainly, the biggest one, perhaps, it allows someone to discriminate in perhaps in a way that is hard to detect, if not impossible to detect, and we definitely don't want that either. So I think it's something that can be debated, whether or not it should be.
My biggest beef with that whole thing was the real estate agents that were trying to save some money, so they want to put it on a private network. But for me, when it's a seller's market, why wouldn't you want as many people bidding on this as possible? Why would you hide it from the public?
So part of that, I'm parroting some of the things that we have been told over the past couple of years. If you're trying to get better pricing data, and you think you can throw it out there for just to try to elicit some offers, if you're trying to sell it without doing all of the fixer-upper things. If you think, hey, let's give it a go, let's say 30 days on private listing network, that's 30 days that doesn't count against your time on the market. So if you're doing it just because you always put homes up on the private listing network without any strategy, I don't like that idea. But if you have strategic if you have a strategic goal in mind with doing that, it's a tool at your disposal. I don't see any harm in that.
I'm sure there's a cost for the MLS, but I don't know what it would be.
Well, they pay dues, right? To have, they pay dues to National Association of Realtors, and I think that gets them access to MLS. I don't know. I don't think it's a huge expense to be on there, and I don't think when I look at broker commission statements, it'll show me the commission, and then there will be like this MLS fee, but I'm led to believe it's a BS fee. Because some of the brokerages don't charge it, but you'll see like on the bigger ones that I won't name, $395 added to the to the list side as a MLS fee. But again, I don't think there actually is an MLS fee, oddly enough.
I do remember, when I listed my house, there was something about the amount of photos that you could put on there, and the amount of text and everything else. And, they said, if you want more photos, we have to pay more, for this.
Could be. They're trying to make money, so whatever. If how many photos do you really need to put up there? If you do have a 10,000 square foot, Michael Jordan's house out in Highland Park, a higher end listing, such as that, the standard is much higher as far as what the expectation is, and you are going to spend more to market at homes like that.
Joey, have you seen, and I know I asked this, but I'm not sure if you answered it, have you seen people applying for pre-approval and closing quicker or slower, or you don't have anything on that?
Oh, man. So I don't know. I've always felt like I'm a very weird lender. I feel like once I issue a pre-approval...
Everybody's nodding their head over here about you being weird, just so you know.
Yeah, I think usually within a couple of weeks I have a contract. There's a few one-offs where it's... My people go hard. My people go hard as soon as they have that pre-approval in hand. They're like, all right, I'm buying anything I see. Man, I'm looking at my latest pre-approvals and they're all under contract. Like, yeah, my people just fly. I don't know why.
And
I
that's
don't know why.
nationwide, though. That's not.
I can't say that's nationwide. That's me. I don't know how long there is between pre-approval and contract for most lenders. I can only say what I
Forgive
see
me. I
in
meant
front of me.
you loan
Oh,
nationwide.
yes. Sorry. That I did on Friday that was under contract that night. So it's just it depends. I don't know what I feel like. Once they're with me, it's because they already have a house in mind, and then like, hey, I want to make an offer like right now.
So all you real estate agents and sellers, if you see Joey's name on the bottom of that page 13, you know that those people are ready to overpay. So you absolutely turn the screws on them.
Overpay.
Those people
not
can't
sure
wait
if
to
that's
throw money
helpful.
your direction.
They're ready to move fast, and they're walking around with a golden ticket, baby.
Yeah.
I do speak sarcasm, but I don't think that's helpful. I'm not sure.
Well,
I love it.
fortunately, we have, dozens and dozens of people who come across this show, and only a select number of people will have received that inside baseball.
Amen to that. So, but that's actually interesting. But again, you market a lot to firemen, police,
Firemen,
veterans.
yeah. The quote
and
unquote hero network.
yeah, and you build pretty solid relationships with the people in those categories, and such. So, I guess most real estate agents won't even show you a house unless you're pre-approved.
Especially now with the buyer broker changes with the NAR settlement after August 17th, they're not going to show you a house at all unless you have your rep agreement signed and in place.
Yeah,
right?
but the rep agreement isn't pre-approval, though, right?
No,
Well,
but if
you're not going to sign a rep agreement without a pre-approval or evidence of funds.
When you say you're talking about the real estate broker?
So think about it this way, Charlie. So I'm a buyer, and it's pre-August 17th, and I've clicked the button on one of the websites that says I want to see this property, and I get sent out, and I meet somebody, and I go, hey, yeah, show me the property. In those cases, that's the steps taken, right? Nowhere in there is get a pre-approval, by and large, unless they've already done that with Joey. So post August 17th, that's no longer the sequence of events. The sequence of events is if you click that button, now you've got to work out a written agreement, one way or the other, whether it's on a quick form or however they're doing it, I don't know. But now, so because you've inserted some friction in that process, it's like at that point the broker is already doing the work to get you to sign that thing. If they're going to make that effort, they are going to also want to see that you're a qualified buyer. They're not just going to take a flyer on meeting someone at a property. So it makes sense to me that what Joey's saying is more customary than it was before, just by virtue of the fact that it's like, okay, you've come far enough to sign a buyer representation agreement. I need you to talk to a lender so that we can see exactly what you qualify for, so that we're not wasting time. No one wants to waste a bunch of time with a buyer that isn't going to be qualified.
Don't hate me. I just had someone walk in the office. I got to go see what's going on because I'm the only one here again.
Sounds good.
All right.
But no, that's all interesting stuff coming in there with the buyer's agreement. And I think there's another thing for real estate agents too, is how do you know who you're showing a house to? I mean, there's bad people on this planet. And
That's true.
We've had people get mugged. We've had people get raped. We've had people get killed.
Yeah, they do have. There's I forget what it's called, but there is like a background check tool that they have as part of like this suite of software.
And they being the real estate brokers.
Correct. I forget. And again, I don't remember the name. It's there's a whole suite of software. Like Showing Time is the one that comes to mind. But along with that is also let's make sure this person's not a doesn't have a background that would make me think twice about meeting them someplace where there are not others.
And if they go ahead and get a mortgage, at least they're giving a lot of intimate personal information to the mortgage person that you really can't fake that.
Well, it certainly demonstrates a level of commitment to that process. Yeah, anyone can just waltz into an open house and be like, oh, I just want to see it. I was just walking by the neighborhood. They have no intention of doing anything. Or they're nosy and they're like, they've always wanted to see what the inside of their neighbor's house looks like.
I do. Yeah.
I could care less, honestly. But, so, yeah, I mean, people have their motivations are all over the place. But if they've got a loan approval, I think that selects out a lot of people who are either time wasters or have, motivations that are more nefarious, I suppose, less than genuine.
I mean, that's kind of a risky thing. But then again, I have always said that, when you start thinking about Uber and Lyft, at least everybody knows, or I should say Uber and Lyft knows who everybody is, assuming that they know who the drivers are because they have to go through a process and get the cars approved and who's they're paying out the money for. You're grinning at me.
Yeah, because then I give my cousin my phone, and he runs off in my car and drives Uber all night, and I don't know what he's up to,
You think that actually happens?
For sure. I mean, it's not regular because if you get caught doing that, you're off the platform, and if that's your main source of income, that's not a risk you can really afford to take. But
I guess I got to look a lot like my brother because your photo's on there, the car's on there, the license plate number's on there.
Sure. I mean, if you're really paying close attention, I think most people just want to get where they're going, and so I don't know. I mean, how much does anyone look like their driver's license photo? Way
Mine
back
still says I weigh 175 pounds. So yeah, I got you.
You're getting back there. I mean, way back in the day. All right, I'll tell you a quick story. My grandfather drove streetcar for. I mean, I don't even think the CTA existed at that point, but he drove a streetcar in Chicago, and during the Great Depression, he would let his buddies take a shift every now and again just to get some income. So this is a thing that's gone back, as long ago as that, where you go, hey, why don't you drive the Uber for the night? I know you need a couple extra bucks, and it's just your cousin. It's no big deal, right?
When I drive, it's a Chuber, a Charlie Uber. What are you talking about? It's a great joke.
All right, Chuber.
That's it. Get that out going. There's still laws about streetcars having right-of-ways in the city of Chicago that are still on the books today.
I mean, who's got time to go through all the laws and get rid of the ones we don't need anymore?
Yeah, this nerd has to go and look that stuff up and see if it still exists.
God, you're annoying.
I know I am. That's all good and stuff like that.
Where do you find time for all this?
I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I get bored and I surf stuff on my phone. I'm sorry.
Good God. Well, everybody, that's your home inspector looking up all of the. He's sitting there memorizing the Illinois plumbing code. That's
Actually,
the guy you want. Oh,
yeah.
Gross.
Are you kidding me? You know how different our Illinois plumbing code is versus the actual international plumbing code?
I try not to memorize anything I couldn't otherwise look up.
That's it. Yeah, but you got to know where to find it all.
I don't have enough space in my head for any of that. So
I just had one of our inspectors ask me about arc fault circuit interrupters in the city of Chicago. And
not required, but it's a good idea.
I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I'm kind of in agreement with the city of Chicago on that sort of stuff. The reason why they don't have it, and it never has, and I don't think it ever will, is because they claim to have some of the safest electricity in the entire world. And being that residential is in conduit, I think it actually is pretty safe. It's when we start getting those series arcs or we're compressing the non-metallic cable wires is when things start getting flammable, but we pull everything in the pipe. Now, granted, we still have a lot of people that do stuff without permits, and we run into just about every single time we'll see non-metallic cable, armor cable inside of a lot of houses that we do it. And maybe those houses, it is better to have arc faults, but it isn't required there. And I want to say Lake Forest, and please don't hate me if I'm wrong on that one. I'm surprised we're not going to get more suburbs buy into it.
Like I said, if I can look it up, I won't memorize it, so I won't know about Lake Forest. So you can say whatever you want about Lake Forest. I'll check you later on it. But yeah, it's interesting. When you speak about AFCIs in general, and yes, that's the acronym for Arc Fault Circuit Interrupter. It's been a while since I've got one of these, but I have had inspectors identify that as a defect in like a Chicago condo. And it's just like, you want to talk about, Joey, I'm about to set Charlie off on about a 15-minute rant. So, if you need some more time.
You might as well introduce yourself again.
I'm Patrick Loftus. I'm a real estate lawyer and professional triggerer. In any event. Yeah, I mean, and all that does when you get something like that on a report is it gets a buyer all worked up about something that is legitimately not something that needs to get worked up. They need to get worked up about, and now I as the lawyer am trying to explain that to them, and really that is backward as it gets. Me explaining why the inspector identified something that is actually not a legitimate concern, and it's right there and then you're dealing with an inspector that I've lost a certain measure of trust in that report when I see something that I just legit know it is not supposed to be on there.
And nobody knows everything. All right, that much I'm going to say. I think I've been doing this home inspection stuff for about 20, 25 years. And then I did a condo in a high rise right off of Lakeshore Drive. And they ended up having the dryer vent inside the unit. And they ran it into this little bucket that had water that would catch the lint. But it was a gas dryer, and they're venting gas combustion products inside the unit. And I called it out. And oh my God, was I told how stupid I was, because every single unit is like that and you're not allowed to vent them to the outside. All right. I learned. I didn't know that.
I was under the impression that you have to have electric for that to be the case. But then again, I think I have a gas dryer, and there's absolutely no way my dryer could vent outside based on where it's located in my unit. So. And
a lot of these condo buildings, the association isn't going to allow it anyway. Same thing with the range hood. So that kind of threw me for a loop. Oh
yeah, that one drives me nuts when it says the range is vented into the unit, and it's like, well, no kidding. We're not gonna. You've got one place for windows to go, and we're not gonna put the kitchen wall there so that you have no light whatsoever. So it's a necessary evil. There's only so many places we can put stuff. So yeah, does my range hood vent anywhere useful? No, it vents back out of the top of the microwave, and then whenever I try to reverse sear my steaks, I set the smoke alarm off. It just is what it is, man. That's the kind of thing that some common sense just tells you that, well, it must be okay, even though it's not the ideal or perfect way. But it's whenever you start seeing things, and I think sometimes, Charlie, you can maybe tell me if I'm totally crazy on this one, but when I see a report that it looks like kind of the place doesn't have any issues, more or less, like they've identified a handful, a couple of things where it's just like note for the future, or things to be maintenance items, and then they'll just pick something out because if they just hand you a clean report, they think they'll be called out for not really doing their work. I think it's okay when the circumstances are such, just to say, look, I didn't find anything in here that's worth putting in an inspection report. Does it happen often? Not at all. Not at all. Just about every place has something that you can catch, and in fact, the more kind of sinister part of me says, leave a couple of obvious things for an inspector to find, so that they feel like they've done their job. Because then, if not, they'll be looking harder and harder for the stuff, because they know that there must be stuff.
Yeah, and I got to say that I won't change what I do. My whole attitude or behavior, and the same thing with our guys, that I want them to take, is somebody going to be happy with this or upset with us? Is my client going to be happy or upset? And if I start seeing little minor issues, let's just take the kitchen exhaust not going to the outside. Totally acceptable. I get it. But I also have a lot of clients that cook with either a lot of greases or they cook with a lot of pungent spices. And for them to get that stuff sent to the outside is a very big deal to them. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
I can tell you a story about that.
So for that, I like to bring it to their attention and stuff. But in all reality, I think it's more so is the ignorance that we as a profession have, in doing our jobs. I mean, I know I said it here before, and Joey Patrick chime in and beat me up on it. But if you want to be a licensed plumber in this state, it's 5 years of schooling and on-the-job training. You want to be a licensed electrician in the Chicagoland area, 5 years of schooling and on-the-job training. HVAC, 4 years of schooling and on-the-job training. And then you start adding in the roofers, the framers, the concrete foundation guys, the doors, windows, doors, cabinets, countertops, drywall, mudding, painting. I mean, there's a lot of different trades that my clients are expecting me to understand and know all those, and I try. All right, but you're talking about 50, 60 years worth of education and experience. Nobody has that.
It's not reasonable to expect that.
But my clients do expect that. All right, and and what happens is when they move in and something's not working right, and they hire a contractor, sometimes that contractor is ethical, sometimes they're not. And if they come in here, well, didn't you get a home inspector? They should have.
Those guys got the biggest mouth until, you circle back with them. Hey, I understand that so-and-so, you told them that the seller definitely knew about that. Absolutely. Man, does their story change as soon as they get on the phone with me. And I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about bringing a claim against that seller. And, my understanding is you said, such and such to my buyer, and they go, oh no, wow, all of a sudden
they misunderstood what I said.
Well, yeah, and it's like that you only have to have that happen a couple of times before you realize that's strictly a matter of them telling somebody something that they think they want, that person wants to hear.
Well, it's big dog, little dog. You walk in there when you think that you want to be the hero, and it's ruff, 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 ruff. And then all of a sudden, when you get called out on it, it's big dog, little dog stuff.
Yeah, it's that's one of those ones I learned through experience. It happens a couple of times, and you go, huh, I wonder if that's a coincidence. And it's not. Obviously, it's just I guess it's just part of the culture or whatever it is. But when you mentioned the pungent spices, I can't believe both of my law school first year roommates are getting brought up in one morning. I haven't thought about those dudes in years. But the one guy was from Switzerland, as I mentioned before we got on the air. The other one was from Korea, and he cooked every day with kimchi and these really, really pungent spices. And we had that situation where the kitchen didn't vent to the outside. And man, I mean, after about half a year of just like being inundated, I kind of lost my temper with him. I'm just like, you gotta stop doing that. You gotta cook with normal stuff. It's just like, what?
Joey and I were on a text change yesterday. I'm going to do a little switch up just because we got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, good. You'll start a new topic right at the end. Perfect.
You know how it works.
That's awful.
And but one of the going back to the VA mortgages, so the Veterans Administration mortgages for our vets, and which is a fantastic problem. It's a fantastic product. Thank you. I did misspeak. But there's also a lot of bad actors in that as well, and
with some really good websites.
Well,
fantastic marketing, best marketing you can get.
And that, what is it, Veterans United or something like that?
Why are you name checking them? Shame on you.
I'm sorry about that. Because it just happened yesterday.
Go on the VALoanNerd.com and forget the rest of that garbage.
No, they shouldn't forget it. They should look at it and compare. The bottom line is Joey understands it a lot more than an artificial intelligence or some other person who's going to be working for minimum wage. When somebody's passionate about what they do it well. That's the bottom line. All right. But my clients didn't really believe that when things go wrong. And what was your take on that? I mean, you kind of backed off of them right away
No,
when
for
they
sure.
came back.
No, and it's because I'm not going to attack any individual loan officer because I don't know who their loan officer is, right? There are loan officers who are fantastic at even the worst companies, right?
True.
And,
Yeah.
and in this situation, it's just that this company has an awful reputation amongst a lot of VA lenders because, one, the name itself is disingenuous because there's very few veterans who actually work at Veterans United. The real name of the company is the Mortgage Research Center. Veterans United is a doing business as name. Obviously, the research indicated that they could probably get a lot of VA loans if they triggered the veteran community into working with them, thinking that they're working with veterans who are united and helping them find a freaking home.
That's like one of those super PACs that has one of those innocuous, like the Freedom Center, and you find out it's like just the worst of the worst.
Well, they were when they were interviewing me, they were asking us, "Well, are you able to do all the paperwork that the VA mortgage is going to need?" And I'm like,
All what paperwork?
that was what I'm like, how do I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I do know what I'm talking about, when I'm telling them that there's no such thing that a home inspector gets involved in when it comes with it. So I try to, and help me because I keep forgetting, Joey, is it NPR or MPS?
It's NPR for VA, MPS for FHA.
So minimum property requirements is the R. Standards is the S. All right. So the minimum property requirements, I am familiar with that thanks to you. All right. You and I went through all these things. And I do know that they need a termite inspection done. So we can go ahead and complete the NPM 833, which is a termite form.
Yep.
But and I'll let my clients know that the appraiser may flag this thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will. They're a human being as well, and a lot of times they don't know what they're looking for.
It's completely true. I mean, a lot of times they flag a bunch of things that don't need to be fixed, and that's when it matters who you're working with. Because I can tell you, generally, the people at that company are going to say, "Hey, this got flagged. You're going to have to get that dealt with." And if it's something like a cracked sidewalk, like that,
that's not in there.
That's everything. Every house has a cracked sidewalk.
Dude, that's what I said. I've had that come up, and I've had to get that waived on several VA loans now because if a cracked sidewalk is an actual MPR, you're never going to close a VA loan in Chicagoland. Period.
Or anywhere for that matter. That's not like brand spanking new construction. I mean, the Chicago is not. We don't have like special concrete that cracks. Whereas they've got everywhere else has good. Fancy concrete that doesn't, but it's.
I did it. I know.
Oh
I'm sorry, but we do have less than a minute, so I need to get all your information back on the radio again, Patrick, please.
Find me on social media for more of this stuff. If you need more than 53 minutes of this, go on social media. There's all sorts of it. Loftus_law on Instagram, Loftus Law on TikTok.
Joey, please.
Joey Mathews, the VA Loan Nerd, thevaloannerd.com, across all social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd. You can call or text 630-235-2405.
And I'm proud to be doing this with both of you for so long. And your knowledge is amazing, and I learned so much.
Meaning of life, go.
Cheap flights. That's the meaning of life. Get cheap flights.
Hey, you said it.
My name is Charlie Bellefontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. I'd like to give a special thank you to Henry. He's taking care of us today.